Here we explore the human experience through the mind, the body, and the soul. Mind Lounge is not about answers. It's about insight. Settle in. Open your mind. Let the conversation begin.
Okay, I want you to visualize something with me for a second. Just picture a small white pill sitting in the palm of your hand.
Right.
It looks completely unremarkable. It's round, it's a bit chalky, totally boring.
The standard pill.
Exactly. Now, imagine you are suffering from something that is just completely destroying your quality of life. Maybe it's chronic, debilitating back pain that keeps you in bed all day.
Or Parkinson's tremor, something you can't control.
Or something really terrifying, like late-stage cancer.
The kind of situation where you're desperate. You'll try anything that might work.
You'll try anything. So you take this pill, and you take it because a doctor in a white coat with all the diplomas on the wall looked you right in the eye and told you, this is the absolute cutting edge of pharmaceutical science. This is the heavy artillery.
You believe them. Of course you do.
You swallow it, you wait, and the pain just stops. The tremors smooth out. The tumors on your scans, they start to shrink.
Yeah.
You are, by every single medical definition, recovering.
Which is, that's the dream outcome. That's what every patient prays for.
It is. It absolutely is. But here's the problem. That pill, it was compressed sugar. There was no active chemical ingredient. There was no medicine in the bottle at all. And yet, the tumor shrank. The pain vanished. Biologically, physically, you changed.
That gap, right? That disconnect between the nothing in the pill and the everything in the result, that is probably the single most provocative mystery in all of medicine.
Yeah.
We're talking about the placebo effect.
Right, but I don't want to talk about it the way we usually do. Because normally when you hear placebo, you think fake.
Or trick.
A trick. Or you think about clinical trials where the placebo is just, it's the boring control group that didn't get the cool new drug.
Which is a huge, huge underestimation of what's actually happening. If we just frame the placebo effect as some kind of nuisance variable in a study.
A statistical error to be eliminated.
Exactly. We are missing the main event. We are missing the fact that the human body has the capability to produce its own pharmacology. It has an internal pharmacy.
That's the question we're chasing today in this deep dive. Can the mind actually cure a physical disease? And I don't mean mind over matter in some, vague spiritual sense of walking on hot coals.
No, we're talking physiology.
Can a thought, a belief, or just an expectation literally rewrite your cellular biology?
And the answer, based on the mountain of research we have today, is a resounding, complicated, and sometimes terrifying yes.
We're going to be looking at something called the Spontaneous Remission Project, which sounds like a sci-fi movie title.
It does, yeah.
But it's actually a very real, very grounded medical database. And we're going to deconstruct the story of a man named Mr. Wright who, and I'm not exaggerating here, melted tumors the size of oranges using nothing but distilled water.
And we have to look at the inverse, too, the dark side of this. Because if the mind can heal, well, it can also destroy. We have documented cases of voodoo death, the nocebo effect, where mere words were enough to stop a person's heart.
It's a lot to wrap your head around. We're drawing from, all over the place. Historical records from the 1700s, a fantastic TEDx talk by Dr. Lissa Rankin on the body's self-repair mechanisms.
And some really crucial reality checks from Dr. Nina Shapiro on medical ethics, because you have to ask the hard question. If I can heal myself with a sugar pill, why do I need a doctor at all?
Right.
And that is the dangerous edge of this whole conversation, and we will absolutely get there. But I think we need to start with the realization that this isn't new. We act like the placebo effect is something we just discovered, when we started inventing modern drugs in the 20th century, but it's ancient.
You mentioned the 1700s. I'm just assuming medicine back then was mostly, guesswork and a shot of whiskey.
Well, there was a fair amount of that, yes. But doctors in the 18th century were surprisingly aware of the power of, let's call it the theater of medicine.
The theater of medicine.
I like that. They didn't have antibiotics. They didn't have chemotherapy, no MRIs, no real understanding of germ theory.
So what did they have? What was in their toolkit?
They had the relationship They had the ritual, and we have records showing doctors routinely used treatments they knew were chemically inert. Things like bread pills, colored water injections.
So just fakes.
They called them placebos, which is Latin for I shall please. The goal wasn't to cure the pathology, because they couldn't. The goal was to please or to soothe the patient, to give them hope.
So they were consciously lying to their patients.
You could say lying, or you could say they were consciously curating hope. And here's where it gets really visceral. They didn't just use fake pills, they used sham surgeries.
Yeah, hold on. Sham surgeries, that sounds like something you'd get arrested for in a back alley today.
It's ethically unthinkable now, of course, but in the context of the time, it was an inquiry into what works. And even into the modern era, we've seen this tested. There were studies, famous studies, involving knee surgeries for arthritis or even heart procedures.
And a sham heart procedure. Explain that. What actually happens?
Okay, picture this. You have severe angina, that's terrible chest pain. You are prepped for surgery, you get the anesthesia, you smell the antiseptic in the air.
The whole pre-op experience.
The whole ritual. You feel the cold scalpel cut your skin. The doctor makes the incision, opens you up. They move things around. You hear the sounds of the operating room, the clanging of instruments.
And then what?
And then they just sew you back up without actually performing the internal repair. They didn't tie off the artery they were supposed to. For the knee surgeries, they didn't scrape the cartilage. They just did the performance of surgery.
That seems unbelievably cruel, to put someone through all that for nothing.
It does seem cruel until you look at the data. In several of these historic studies, the patients who got the sham surgery recovered at the same rate, and sometimes even better than the people who got the actual mechanical fix.
Wait. You're saying that just cutting someone open and sewing them back up did the same thing as the actual heart procedure?
In terms of symptom relief, in terms of reported pain reduction and recovery.
Yes.
How is that possible?
Because the brain believed a major, powerful intervention had occurred. The trauma of the incision, the gravity of the whole surgical event, it signaled the body to go into an emergency repair mode. It flipped a switch.
That completely upends the whole idea that medicine is just mechanics. You know, we think the car is broken, so I'll replace the spark plug.
Right.
But you're saying the car can fix its own spark plug if it just thinks a mechanic touched it.
That's a fantastic analogy. The body isn't a car, it's a dynamic, responsive ecosystem. But eventually science had to step in and say, okay, this is getting confusing. We need to control for this effect. And that brings us to the 1950s and the clinical trial revolution.
Exactly. Post-World War II, we enter this golden age of pharmacology. We're developing real potent drugs, antibiotics, vaccines, antipsychotics. And researchers realized pretty quickly that if they just gave a patient a new drug and the patient got better, well, they hadn't proven anything.
Because the patient might have gotten better just from the excitement or the hope of taking a new pill.
Precisely. The placebo effect was so consistently strong, I mean, we're talking healing 30, 40, sometimes 50% of people in these trials, that it had to become the baseline. To prove a new drug actually works, it has to beat the placebo. It has to be measurably better than pure belief.
And this is the double-blind, randomized controlled trial we always hear about, the gold standard.
The gold standard. Neither the doctor administering the pill nor the patient taking it knows who has the real drug and who has the placebo.
It's designed to eliminate the bias of hope.
To isolate the chemical effect from the psychological one. But there's a fascinating shift happening right now in medical ethics. You mentioned Dr. Nina Shapiro's work earlier. We're getting to a point where using a pure placebo in trials for serious life-threatening conditions is becoming ethically impossible.
Walk me through that logic. I mean, if it's the gold standard, why would we stop?
Well, imagine a clinical trial for a new chemotherapy agent for, say, aggressive lung cancer. We already have a standard treatment, an old drug that we know saves maybe 40% of people.
Okay.
If we run a new trial where half the people get the new drug and the other half get a sugar pill,
You are knowingly condemning the sugar pill group to death. You're giving them nothing when a proven treatment exists.
you're denying them the standard of care. You are, in effect, sacrificing them for data. And the medical community has decided we just can't do that anymore. So now most major trials compare the new drug against the old drug.
Which makes total sense ethically, but doesn't it kind of, obscure the placebo effect? We stop measuring how much the mind is contributing, and we only measure the difference between two chemicals.
It absolutely does. It pushes the placebo effect into the background. It treats it as noise again. And that is precisely why the work of Dr. Lissa Rankin is so critical. She decided to stop treating these unexplained recoveries as statistical noise and start treating them as the signal.
This is her spontaneous remission project.
Yes, she's a physician, and she started digging into the medical literature. We're talking peer-reviewed journals, not, anecdotal blogs. And she started compiling a database. She found over 3,500 cases of spontaneous remission.
And define spontaneous remission for us in this context. What does that mean?
It means a patient had a medically verified, often incurable illness, stage 4 cancer, HIV, heart failure, you name it, and they recovered without the conventional medical treatment that should have been necessary to save them.
So the disease just went away.
It just went away.
3,500 cases. That's not a handful of flukes. That's a small town of people who defied medical physics.
It's a dataset you simply can't ignore. And when she looked closer at the placebo arms of various studies, she found that the fake treatment effectiveness wasn't just, say, 30%. In some studies, depending on the condition, the numbers were staggering. Anywhere from 18% to 80% of patients got better on the fake cure.
80%. Hold on. 80% is not a placebo effect. That's a cure rate.
If a pharmaceutical company developed a drug that cured 80% of patients with a chronic condition, it would be the biggest blockbuster multi-billion-dollar product in history.
Of course.
But because it's a sugar pill, we dismiss it. We say, oh, that's just the placebo. Dr. Rankin's whole argument is we need to figure out what that is. We need to figure out how to bottle that.
Okay, we have to talk about the story that absolutely stopped me in my tracks when I was going through the research. If you want to understand the raw power of belief, you have to understand the story of Mr. Wright.
This is the case study to end all case studies. It was first reported by a psychologist named Bruno Klopfer back in 1957. It's just incredible.
So let's set the scene. It's the late 1950s. A man, Mr. Wright, is dying. He has advanced lymphosarcoma. And this isn't a maybe situation.
No, this is end stage.
He has tumors the size of oranges in his neck, his groin, his armpits. His body is riddled with them.
The reports say his spleen and liver were enormously enlarged. He was fluid-filled. He was taking oxygen by mask just to breathe. His doctors had essentially signed his death certificate. They expected him to pass away over the weekend.
But Mr. Wright is clutching onto one single thread of hope. He's heard about a new experimental drug called Krebiozin.
Right. Krebiozin was this new compound being touted in the media at the time as a potential miracle cure for cancer. There was a lot of hype around it.
And Mr. Wright is begging his doctor for it. He's saying, just give me the Krebiozin. I know it will save me.
Yeah.
Now, he didn't technically qualify for the clinical trial, right? He was too sick.
Correct. The protocol said he was too terminal. Giving it to him would have just skewed the data. But his doctor, a man named Dr. Philip West, decided to break protocol. Essentially, he did it out of pity. He thought, what's the harm? Why deny a dying man his last wish?
So on a Friday, he injects Mr. Wright with a dose of Krebiozin.
Right. And Dr. West fully expects this to do nothing. He leaves the hospital for the weekend. He comes back on Monday morning, fully expecting to find Mr. Wright's bed empty or worse. Instead, he finds Mr. Wright walking around the ward. He's out of bed. He's cheerful. He's chatting with the nurses, joking even.
And the tumors. The orange-sized tumor.
The report says they had melted like snowballs on a hot stove. In just 3 days, they were half their original size.
Biologically, that's absurd.
It's impossible. Cancer cells do not undergo apoptosis. That's programmed cell death at that speed, not even with the most powerful chemotherapy we have today. It usually takes weeks or months to see that kind of shrinkage. This was a rapid structural dismantling of the disease.
So he continues the treatment. He gets better and better. He's discharged from the hospital. He goes home. The report says he's feeling so good, he's flying his private plane at 12,000 feet.
Mm-hmm.
He is, for all intents and purposes, a cured man.
For 2 months.
And here's the first incredible twist. Reports start coming out in the medical journals and the newspapers that Krebiozin is.
Well, that's a dud.
It wasn't working for other people. The initial hype was just that. The data was showing it was likely inert or totally ineffective.
Mr. Wright reads these reports. He's a rational, educated man. And what happens when he reads them?
His logic overrides his biology. He loses faith. The magic is gone. And almost immediately, the tumors return.
Oh, man.
He's readmitted to the hospital, back on his deathbed, in the exact same condition he was in before.
Now, this is the part of the story where things get ethically murky, but scientifically brilliant. His doctor, Dr. West, sees this happen and has this incredible insight. He thinks, okay, wait a minute. The drug didn't save him. His belief in the drug saved him. So Dr. West decides to run a one-person, high-stakes experiment. He decides to lie to his patient.
He goes to Mr. Wright and he says, look, Don't believe what you read in the news. The stuff they were testing, that was a bad batch. It had degraded during shipping, but I've managed to secure a new supply. This is double-strength, ultra-pure cryogen. It's on its way.
He builds up the anticipation, he creates a new story, a new ritual of hope, and then a few days later he injects Mr. Right. But not with cryogen.
With what?
Distilled water.
Just what?
Just sterile water. An inert saline solution. Nothing.
And what happened?
And Mr. Wright recovers again. The tumors melt away for a second time. The fluid disappears from his chest. He's back on his feet, fully symptom-free. He is cured by water because he believed it was the double-strength solution.
That is, I mean, on one hand, it's absolutely amazing. On the other, it's terrifying. It means his own body had the capacity to kill the cancer the entire time.
It just needed permission.
You just needed the right signal.
It needed the all-clear signal from the central nervous system, from his brain, to switch resources back to the immune system and go on the attack.
But the story has a final tragic ending.
It does. A few months later, the American Medical Association published their final, definitive, nationwide report on cryogen. It stated categorically, cryogen is a worthless substance in the treatment of cancer.
There was no wiggle room this time, no bad batch excuse he could cling to. This was the final word from the highest authority.
Mr. Wright read that final report. He realized he had been tricked. The double-strength cure was a lie. The magic was gone for good. He died 2 days later.
God, that just gives me chills.
It should. It's the most profound demonstration that the mind can be a life support system, but it can also pull the plug. When his belief structure completely collapsed, his physiology collapsed right along with it.
Which brings us, inevitably, to the dark side of this coin. Because if I can think myself well, logic dictates I can also think myself sick.
Or even think myself to death. This is the nocebo effect. Nocebo is Latin for I shall harm.
Dr. Rankin mentions a case in her work that honestly, it sounds like something out of folklore, but she says it's in the medical literature. The story of the hexed girls.
This is a heavy story. It's a really difficult one. It involves 3 children, 3 baby girls, delivered by the same midwife in a particular community. And for reasons that aren't entirely clear in the records, this midwife pronounced a hex on them at birth.
A hex? You mean like a literal curse?
Exactly. A curse. And she didn't just say, you're cursed. She predicted the exact dates of their deaths. One was prophesied to die at age 16, one at 21, and the third at 23.
And the parents believed this. The community bought into it.
The belief was pervasive. It became part of their cultural reality. These girls grew up their entire lives with this sword of Damocles hanging over their heads. Imagine being a child and being told you are going to die on your 16th birthday.
That's psychological torture.
It's the ultimate negative expectation. And what happened?
What happened?
The first girl died just before her 16th birthday. The second died at 21. The third at 23.
Stop.
Yeah.
You cannot tell me that 3 otherwise healthy young women just dropped dead because a calendar page turned. What was the cause of death listed on the certificate?
That's the chilling part. Autopsies didn't show a specific pathology, like a burst aneurysm or a sudden heart defect. They essentially died of system failure, of fright.
How is that physically possible? How does a thought kill you?
This brings us right to the physiology. We have to stop thinking of this as magic and start looking at the neurotransmitters and the hormones. This is the work of Walter Cannon, a Harvard physiologist, on what he termed voodoo death.
Voodoo death is a real scientific term.
It is, yeah. Cannon was studying these phenomena in indigenous cultures. He proposed that extreme, inescapable fear, the kind of fear where you're absolutely certain you're about to die, triggers a permanent, relentless fight or flight response.
The stress response.
But not just, I'm late for a meeting stress. We are talking about a constant, unstoppable flood of catecholamines, that's adrenaline and norepinephrine, that never shuts off. It forces the heart into a chaotic rhythm or causes the blood vessels to constrict so much that blood pressure just collapses. The system is overwhelmed.
So they were literally scared to death.
Literally. The belief, the certainty of I will die, triggered a biological cascade that fulfilled the prophecy.
Okay, we need to drill down into this mechanism because most of us, hopefully, aren't dealing with hexes, but we are dealing with chronic stress, with the fear of a bad diagnosis, with constant anxiety. What is actually happening inside the body when we believe we're in danger?
Think of your body like a country with a limited budget. You have a national economy. You have a finite amount of resources, energy, proteins, minerals.
Okay, I'm with you. Energy is the currency.
Right. Now, when you are in a state of relaxation, what Dr. Rankin and others call the relaxation response, your body is in peacetime. During peacetime, the country spends its budget on infrastructure projects. It repairs digestion. It builds new cells. The immune system is like a police force patrolling the streets looking for cancer cells and killing them. It cleans up plaques in the arteries. It's all about long-term maintenance and growth.
So peacetime is maintenance time. That makes sense.
Exactly. But when the brain perceives a threat, and this is key, it doesn't matter if the threat is a real lion or your boss screaming at you or a deep-seated belief that you are hexed, the body immediately shifts to a war economy.
It's a fight or flight response.
The HPA axis, that's the hypothalamus, pituitary, adrenal axis, it activates. It's like a general sounding an alarm, and it dumps cortisol and adrenaline into the blood. Now, notice what happens to the national budget.
What happens?
The body immediately strips funding from all the long-term projects. It shuts down digestion. Who needs to digest a sandwich right now? It shuts down the reproductive system. And most importantly for this conversation, it shuts down the immune system.
The repair crew gets furloughed.
Exactly. Because if a lion is chasing me, my body doesn't care about a cancer cell that might kill me in 10 years. It cares about the lion that's going to kill me in 10 seconds. All energy has to go to the muscles to run or fight. So the repair crew that fixes your body is sent home.
This makes total evolutionary sense for a 5-minute sprint away from a predator.
But modern humans don't sprint for 5 minutes. We simmer in chronic psychological stress for 50 years. We live in a permanent, low-grade war economy.
So we're chronically immunocompromised. Not because of a virus or a disease, but because of our own thoughts.
Precisely. If you believe the world is a dangerous place, if you are chronically pessimistic, if you are profoundly lonely, you are keeping your cortisol levels high. You are keeping the repair crew locked out of the building day after day.
And that explains why the relaxation response is so medicinal. It's not just about feeling zen or blissed out. It's about literally reopening the body's repair shop.
It is the physiological flip of that switch. When you feel safe, loved, hopeful, or nurtured, the cortisol drops. The body then releases a whole different cocktail of chemicals. Oxytocin, dopamine, nitric oxide, endorphins. These aren't just feel-good molecules. They are healing molecules. They are anti-inflammatories. The immune system wakes up and says, oh, the war is over. Great. Let's go clean up those tumor cells we've been ignoring.
So when Mr. Wright believed with every fiber of his being that he was cured, he switched from a war economy to a peacetime economy in an instant.
And his immune system, which had been suppressed by the terror of dying from cancer, suddenly came back online with massive, overwhelming force.
This leads us directly to Dr. Rankin's concept of the whole health Karen. Because if chronic stress is the enemy, then true health can't just be about diet and exercise.
This is a huge paradigm shift for most of us. We're trained to think that health is a simple checklist. Eat your kale, run 5 miles, take your vitamins, get 8 hours of sleep.
And Rankin's argument is, you can eat all the organic kale in the world, but if you're in a toxic marriage or a soul-crushing job, you're still sick.
Right. She identifies these other, often ignored, pillars of health. Your relationships, your professional life, your creative life, your spiritual life, your sex life, your financial life, your environment. She argues these aren't just lifestyle choices. They are, in her words, epigenetic modulators.
Meaning they physically turn our genes on and off.
Exactly. They change the biochemical soup our cells are swimming in. Let's look in the data she cites on loneliness. This one really hit me hard.
Yeah, lay this out for us.
There are large-scale studies showing that people with strong social networks, good friends, close family, community ties, have half the rate of heart disease compared to people who report feeling lonely.
Half. That's not a small effect. That's better than most statin drugs.
It's a health benefit comparable to quitting a pack-a-day smoking habit.
Why? What is the mechanism? Is it just that having friends around makes you happier?
Let's go back to the evolutionary biology. For a human on the savannah 50,000 years ago, what did it mean to be alone, to be separated from your tribe?
It meant you were dead. You were easy prey. You were tiger food.
Exactly. Social isolation is a profound survival threat. So when you are lonely, your brain enters a state of hypervigilance. You sleep shallower. Your cortisol is chronically elevated. Your inflammation markers go up. Your body is constantly bracing for an attack because you have no tribe to protect you.
So our bodies interpret loneliness as being biologically indistinguishable from being in constant physical danger.
Yes. And conversely, being in a loving, supportive community is a constant signal to your amygdala, the fear center of your brain that says, you are safe, stand down, go into peacetime.
What about some of the other factors? She mentions things like having a creative life. To a skeptic, that might feel a bit fluffy, paint a picture and cure your cancer.
It does sound fluffy until you reframe it through the lens of the stress response. Think about it. If you are in a job that you absolutely hate, a job that violates your moral code or completely suppresses your identity, you are spending 8 to 10 hours a day in a state of internal resistance, in a state of constant friction.
Which is stress.
Which is cortisol. There is data showing that things like workaholism and, interestingly, the failure to take regular vacations significantly increases your risk of heart disease. It's not just that you're tired, it's that you never ever let the engine cool down. You're always in that war economy.
So the implication here is pretty radical. The guy eating burgers and drinking beer, who laughs all day with his friends and absolutely loves his job, might actually be healthier, at least in terms of his internal immune environment, than the lonely, stressed-out vegan triathlete who hates his life.
That is the controversial but increasingly data-backed implication. The biochemical soup created by joy, purpose, and connection might be more protective against disease than the nutrients in the kale.
Okay, I want to pivot now to something that just twists this whole conversation inside out again. Because up until now, we've basically been talking about tricking the brain. Mr. Wright was tricked. The sham surgery patients were tricked.
We're operating on the assumption that deception is the key ingredient.
Right. But then you have this incredible Harvard study on open-label placebos. And this just makes no sense to me on the surface.
This is the work of a researcher named Ted Kapchuk and his team at Harvard. It's truly brilliant. They recruited a group of patients with irritable bowel syndrome, or IBS.
A really miserable condition. Painful, chronic cramping, very hard to treat.
And usually in a trial like this, you'd give half of them a fake pill and tell them this is a potent new drug for IBS.
The classic deception model.
Right. But Kapchuk did something completely radical. He gave the patients the bottle of pills. And the label on the bottle literally said placebo.
It said the word placebo on it.
Yes. And not only that, the doctor told them explicitly, these pills you're about to take have no medicine in them. They are made of an inert substance like sugar. However, clinical trials have shown that placebo pills like these can activate self-healing mechanisms in the brain and body.
So here is a fake pill, but it might work anyway because your brain is powerful? They were totally honest.
Totally honest. And guess what?
They still got better.
They got significantly better. Their reported symptom relief was comparable to, and in some cases better than, the best available real pharmaceutical drugs for IBS.
How? How is that possible?
Yeah.
If I know it's sugar, how does my brain get tricked?
It's not about tricking the conscious, logical mind anymore. It's about triggering a conditioned response in the unconscious mind. Think about Pavlov's dogs.
You ring the bell, the dog salivates, even if there's no food.
Exactly. The bell becomes a symbol that triggers a physiological response. For your entire life, since you were a baby, your brain has been conditioned that doctor plus pill equals relief.
It's a conditioned reflex.
It's a powerful one. You go to the clinic, you see the white coat, you smell the antiseptic, you get the prescription, you take the pill. That entire ritual is the bell.
So even if my conscious brain is screaming, this is just sugar, my unconscious conditioned brain hears the bell ringing and releases the endorphins and other healing chemicals anyway.
Correct. The ritual of care itself is the active ingredient. The act of doing something proactive for your health, of being cared for by a medical authority, is enough to trigger the relaxation response and change your biology.
That implies that the entire medical system, the buildings, the uniforms, the waiting rooms, the prescription pads, is a giant placebo machine.
It's a form of medical theater, and that theater has profound biological validity. This brings us to the real, measurable importance of something we dismiss as soft skills, like a doctor's bedside manner.
Right. It's not just about being polite and making small talk.
No. There was a Stanford study showing that the way a doctor delivers news directly impacts the patient's outcome. If they deliver news, even bad news, with warmth, reassurance, and hope, the patient does better than if the news is delivered with cold, clinical detachment.
Because the warmth prevents the cortisol spike, keeps them out of the fear state.
Precisely. A doctor who scares you, who robs you of hope, is a nocebo. A doctor who reassures you and empowers you is a placebo.
However, and this is a massive however, we have to put a huge asterisk here. We have to bring in Dr. Nina Shapiro, the author of Hype, because I don't want people walking away from this deep dive thinking they can cure a broken leg by staring at a sugar cube.
This is the absolute critical reality check. Dr. Shapiro's work points out that placebos work best on symptoms and subjective experiences.
Things like pain, nausea, fatigue, mood, anxiety.
Things that are largely regulated by the brain. If you have IBS, the problem is largely how the brain and the gut are communicating. A placebo can absolutely fix that miscommunication. It can soothe the system.
But if I have a raging bacterial infection,
A placebo might make you feel less crummy, but it will not kill the bacteria. You need an antibiotic. If you have type 1 diabetes, you need insulin. No amount of positive thinking is going to make your pancreas produce insulin again if the cells that do that are physically dead.
and that's the real danger here, isn't it? People rejecting proven life-saving medicine in favor of manifesting their health.
Exactly. The real tragedy of Mr. Wright wasn't that he believed in the placebo. It was that when the placebo inevitably failed him, he had nothing else. Dr. Shapiro warns against the hype that suggests you are 100% responsible for your health, that it's all in your head.
Right. Because sometimes you get sick not because you had bad thoughts, but because you have bad genetics, or you were exposed to asbestos, or you just have bad luck.
And blaming the patient for their own disease because they weren't positive enough is a really cruel and dangerous side effect of this whole mindset. We have to avoid that at all costs.
So the placebo shouldn't be a replacement for medicine, it should be an adjunct. It's the wind in the sails, but you still need the boat of actual medicine.
That is perfectly put. The ideal approach is to use the best of Western medicine, the surgery, the drugs, the radiation, but to optimize the terrain of the body using the power of the mind. Don't fight the chemotherapy with stress and fear. Welcome the chemotherapy with relaxation and hope.
We've covered so much ground here, from 18th century sham surgeries to tumors melting in 1957, to the modern realization that loneliness is a physical toxin. If we have to synthesize this into one main takeaway for the listener, what is it?
I think the synthesis is, it's empowerment, but it's a grounded, responsible empowerment. We have spent the last century viewing the human body as a machine that just breaks down and needs an external mechanic to come in and fix it.
Right. Swap out the part, refill the fluids, send it on its way.
But the data we've discussed today shows we are not machines. We are more like gardens.
Yeah.
We are complex ecosystems, and our thoughts, our relationships, and our beliefs are the weather in that ecosystem. They determine if the garden thrives or withers.
So we have much more control over that weather than we think.
We have a pharmacy inside of us. And every day, with every thought, we can choose to dispense cortisol and adrenaline, the poisons. Or we can choose to dispense oxytocin and endorphins and dopamine, the medicine. We make that choice largely through how we perceive the world and our place in it.
It's a heavy thought. It means I can't just passively wait for the doctor to fix me. I have to participate in my own healing.
You are the primary care physician of your own body in a very real and biological sense.
I want to leave everyone with one final provocation, something to really chew on. We talked about that open-label placebo study.
Yes.
People taking a sugar pill, knowing it was a sugar pill, and still getting better.
Astonishing.
If a sugar pill works when you know it's sugar, it forces us to ask, was the medicine ever really in the bottle to begin with? Or was the bottle just the key that unlocks something we already had inside us the whole time?
And if we already have it, why are we waiting for a pill to use it?
Exactly. And to flip that on its head, if our beliefs are the on-off switch for our own immune system, what diseases are we inviting in right now simply because we're cynical? What health risks are we creating for ourselves just by being afraid?
Hope isn't just a nice feeling. The science is showing it's a biological survival strategy.
That is something to think about. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us.
A pleasure as always.
Stay curious, everyone, and we'll see you next time.